Welcome to the United States of America podcast. I am your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here on North Carolina. We welcome you to make yourself comfortable as we go over the current state of the world and our nation. If you've missed past episodes, please be sure to take the time to at least watch the first episode to have a proper introduction to our conversations. These conversations are not otherwise happening in any sequential order. Please be aware that we expect you to behave with honor in our comment section. We are a people at peace, and we have declared peace to all nations around the world. This is not a marketing or a sales podcast, and we are not sovereign citizens. Sovereign citizen is an oxymoron, and if you say that you are a sovereign citizen, then you are a moron. A sovereign is a free and honorable living man or woman who operates under God's law or natural law and who honors themselves and others in peace. One definition for the word citizen is slave, but there are different kinds of citizens. When you put those two words together, it's an oxymoron. We also do not promote or condone TikTok, Facebook, or any other social media games to test the system or to impose your beliefs onto society at large. This is not a marketing and promotional channel. We are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you. We are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We are interested in helping you reclaim your birthright and your inheritance. We are not sitting in judgment of you. This information is a beacon of light for you to use when you choose to seek it. We have marshals at arms that are designated as moderators who are assisting in the comment section. Please be kind with your words. If you diminish others, you will be put in a timeout or deleted and blocked as deemed necessary. If you have questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. I am joined on air with our North Carolina Marshal at Arms, Cynthia Pinkston, and now I am proud to introduce you to Justice Anna Maria, who is joining us live from Alaska today. Yay! Good morning, Anna. Good morning, Cynthia. How's everybody doing?
Well, I'm pretty fine. Find the frogs here.
I ate much over Easter.
You ate too much, girl. Uh-oh.
Oh.
At least I didn't buy the wrong ham.
That's no fun, Anna.
No. Everyone was disappointed. We all felt like we had double helpings of ice cream instead of a ham dinner because the ham was so sicky sweet. I don't know how anybody does that, but anyway.
I don't know. We get the smoked ones too from the farms. Okay, Anna, today I thought it would be nice to introduce everyone to the American Federation. I am often asked, what is the Federation? Most people have absolutely no idea that we have a federation or what the work of the Federation is. Head of state, we don't have one, they say. Sounds ridiculous, but they only know that the Fed is the government they complain about, but they do not know the traditional American governmental structure. Head of state, we have a president. What are you talking about, Niti? They say to me. They think that when I speak of the Federation or our hereditary head of state, that I am, quote, a traitor. In fact, when I tell people about your work, Anna, they think that you're the infiltrator. And in last week's coordinator training, you mentioned that you do not receive direct responses to your notices, that you send out. And like when you're sending notices to the corporatocracy, warning them or telling them to stand down or notifying them of their misconduct. And so I thought it would be kind of nice when you explain about the Federation, if you talk about that a little bit. I was thinking that they don't respond to you directly because corporations actually have no liability and no living man with actual authority is there to address you on behalf of them. I think. I mean, this is my understanding of how that works. But could you speak about all of that this morning?
You have to understand that the way the jurisdictions work, we're the only ones that are alive. All the people that are operating in international and global jurisdictions are dead. They're persons. They're not people. And this sounds very strange, but if you get into any real court battles, you'll quickly find that there are times when the court falls silent. And that's when they're recognizing that you are operating as a man or a woman. When they recognize that you're operating as a man or a woman, they fall silent because they're dead. They can't speak to you. And so the same thing happens when you deal in the government. The corporations and their officers are supposed to be operating as an instrumentality of the American subcontractor that should be in operation, which we know as the Federal Republic. But the Federal Republic has been out of business, dormant, sitting on a shelf as a corporate entity itself since the 1860s. So the other two foreign subcontractors, which are operating in international and global jurisdictions, don't have an instruction. They've been left to their own devices for 160 years. And so they've taken advantage of the situation and have made various self-interested presumptions about it, and have continued to take actions which benefit them and their corporations, but which are not in keeping with their service contracts, the constitutions, and which are not for the benefit of the American people. They're for the benefit of their officers and shareholders. So we are at odds with our own employees, with our own subcontractors, with our own vendors, okay? And the instrumentality that we would normally have to interface with them and give them direction, the Federal Republic is not in operation. Now, this then goes back to the structure of the American government versus the U.S. government. And first and foremost, people need to know that there are two different things here. The Federation is not the federal government, okay? The federal government is named after the Federation government. And the American government is separate from the United States government. These are two different governments and two different histories and two different subjects. And when I was growing up and going through school back in the dinosaur days, we actually had two different school books that were studied on 2 different years. And it was absolutely apparent to us that, yes, there are 2 different governments working in tandem here. And here they are, and here's how they work together. Unfortunately, today, people going through public school don't have this information. Today, all they hear about is the United States government. They don't actually hear about or are taught anything about the American government. In fact, the American government is obscured. And so what we're doing here is bringing forth what the American government is and what the American history is, as opposed to the British territorial U.S. government history, which is what we get fed in school. Now, it's very important that a whole new generation of Americans come to terms with how this is actually supposed to be structured and how we are supposed to actually hold a completely different relationship with the federal government. And a good deal of this is about redefining our relationship with the federal government. Because the federal government has taken the position that they're our mommy and daddy, our custodians, our caretakers, who are responsible for directing every element of our lives and telling us what to do and picking our pockets. Whereas we take the position that, no, there are employees under contract, and there it is. So it's a completely different relationship with government that we enjoy, as opposed to those who subscribe to that government as shareholders and are obligated to take whatever instructions and orders the government gives them. It's the difference between the nanny state and the donor state. And so let's begin with that as an intro as to why this is important. And now let's turn our attention to the American government as opposed to the United States government. The American government is composed of three parts. The first part is the Union states. The second part are the Federation states called the States of the Union. And the third part is the Confederation of States, which are actually the members of the Confederation are actually state of state organizations. And the way this developed and the way to look at it is that you're looking at different jurisdictions. You're looking at different realms of endeavor here. So the Union states occupy the soil jurisdiction, which is the national soil where you actually live and breathe. The soil is determined to be the first 6 inches of the land, okay, the top soil, right? And that's where we actually live and breathe and have our lives. If you think about it, we stand on the soil, which is underlain by the land, and then we breathe the air, and that's our natural habitat. So the soil is controlled by the Union states, and it's a national jurisdiction within each state, and it is it's the venue of local government. It's where you get to control your local conditions and traditions and customs and everything else about your state of the union. In our system of government, the people who live in the state own the state, literally. In our system of government, the people who make up the local government get to say what happens in their locale. Within their county, they are supreme. And when all the counties are put together, they make up a state. And I'm sure you've all seen maps of a state with all sorts of little county sections within the state, like a patchwork, right? Well, it's the county soil jurisdiction that fills in that state outline that is the Union state. It's all those county governments joined together as a whole that makes the Union state. And that's all national soil jurisdiction. Underlying that, think of it as the subsoil, is the land. And the land is a separate jurisdiction. The land is an international jurisdiction. Because if you think about it, the subsoil throughout the planet is all conjoined. I mean, even under the ocean, what have you got? You've got soil and land underlying the ocean. If you also think about it, if you remove the top 6 inches of soil and are now looking at what used to be the subsoil, what happens? Well, there's another 6 inches of surface, isn't there? And the fact that it's new surface doesn't matter. It's still the top 6 inches, isn't it? So you can't get away from the inextricable melding together of the land and soil. They coexist, and one is dependent on the other. If you don't have the land jurisdiction in international jurisdiction, then you can't have the soil jurisdiction in national jurisdiction, right? So the two things have to go together. And the land, being an international jurisdiction, makes up a different state, and that's the state of the Union. Now, the state of the Union underlying the soil jurisdiction of the counties is key to being able to operate in international trade and international commerce, both. And so we're talking about layers of American government. The American government includes the Union state composed of the county that holds the national jurisdiction. And it also includes the State of the Union, which holds the international land jurisdiction. And those are our fundamental instrumentalities. They were both formed in 1776 among the original colonies that became states. And so the Union State was formed with the creation of the Union, which was a result of the unanimous Declaration of Independence, with which we're all very familiar, in July of 1776. Shortly following after that, in the fall of 1776, the international state was created, and its members were all international land jurisdiction states, and they joined together to form the Federation called the United States of America, which is an unincorporated federation of the states of the Union. And finally, in 1781, for basically going on 5 years after the creation of the Federation of States, we have the adoption of the Confederation of States. Now, to the extent that some people may have been taught something about this in school, there's often a mistaken idea that this was a continuum affecting the same states. But as you've seen, the soil is separate from the international jurisdiction, from the land, right? Soil and land are two different, distinct jurisdictions, one national, one international. And when you add on the Confederation, you are once again entering a different jurisdiction. You're entering the jurisdiction of the air. And with the Confederation of States, what you have are members of that confederation are states of states. And we're all familiar with states of states, though we may not know the definition of what a state of state is. So in 1781, the American government created the Confederation of States, and they created all these different organizations called state of states as instrumentalities to conduct business in the realm of commerce. And most people don't understand that commerce is different than trade. Commerce is business between two incorporated entities. It's business between businesses. Whereas trade can include business conducted between individual people or between individual unincorporated businesses. Okay, so the American government has the Union States operating the soil jurisdiction. It has the Federation States, the states of the Union operating the international land jurisdiction. And then you have ideally, you would have, if your government were complete at this point, you would have the States of America organization composed of state organizations from each one of the states, operating all the commercial business for the government. Well, what happened in the Civil War is that the Confederation of States got blown away. It ceased to function. And so that leaves the American government functioning on two cylinders. The Union States and the states of the Union are still intact and still functioning, but the Confederation of States and their state of state organizations is not, and hasn't since the 1860s. All right, so that's the American government. And that's the government that we think of in our brains when we think of the state, because we, being people, living people, think of it in terms of the physical state. You know, we think about the land and the soil and the landmarks and the roads and and all of the physical attributes of our state, right?
The real things, the real living, we're alive. We're alive.
Yes, exactly. And so, we obviously, when we're talking about going to Louisiana, we're not talking about going to a file cabinet and dipping in and finding a file labeled Louisiana. We're talking about actually getting in a car or a boat or something and going to a physical place called Louisiana. And that's our states. Our states are physical.
You just said something important too, Anna. You said that businesses, when they're addressing businesses, do that in commerce and in commerce law or commercial law. That's important because we're supposedly, like, they've made us into because they've used our names, they've impersonated us, and they're using us as a usufruct. So they've made us into these commercial entities, and so anything that we're doing with them, according to, based on what you've just taught us, we should only be addressing them in a commercial venue in that situation.
Well, see, there's a veil or a bar between the physical and the non-physical, right?
Right.
And so that distinction especially applies to the federal government because the federal government was never delegated any powers that relate to the physical world. The federal government.
I just want to pause right here for a moment. I don't think people feel the gravity of this piece. This is important. Yes, all the people that are calling me a traitor all the time, because they're calling me a traitor for this, okay, for this flag. And when we talk about any of these things, they think that we're the ones that are the traitors. They can't comprehend
that they've been hoodwinked.
Right.
In their own country.
But when you speak about it, and this is where I think the hiccup is, Anna. It's so basic. It's so basic, and it's in your face basic that everybody's like, no.
Well, it is it's outrageous.
Right. Jurisdiction is so anybody listening to this, please, you want to comprehend jurisdiction first. If you can get it, if you really can comprehend the jurisdiction, and sometimes, what helps is these nesting boxes. Like when you nest boxes inside of each other, then you can kind of comprehend jurisdictions a little bit better because there's bigger boxes, and so you can see where everybody fits in. And then what everyone out there should try to imagine, like go back to your childhood and just use your imagination and just imagine yourself like, you're the beginning and the end. That is what Jesus said. We are the beginning and the end. The jurisdiction begins with us and ends with us. We have general jurisdiction.
Right.
Because we're the living ones. We're real. When we say that you're operating, like we're operating in reality. Remember this, Anna, it's all like clicking and it's all like coming together. I hope it's coming together for everybody else. You were saying we don't insure ourselves. We should be indemnified. We don't insure ourselves. We should be, because insurance is for irresponsible dead corporations. Indemnification is for those of us who are taking like actual responsibility.
Right. We're the ultimate underwriters.
Friends, I just don't know if they're getting it, this part. This is the crux of it.
They say that it takes 10 times for a baby to taste a food before they recognize it as food. It takes more than once for people to really wrap their heads around what I'm telling them, because they were never taught it as children. I was taught this as a child growing up in grade school. I'm old enough so that I got the benefit of that education, and I'm sharing it back to you as one American to another so that this entire country is not lost. Okay? We have to remember who we are and act upon that, or we can't enforce our constitutions. We can't enforce any of our contracts, and we become the subjects of foreign governments. And so it is important, it is very important that Americans remember their American history.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just here teaching you American history. And I just outlined the fact of how our government is organized and has been organized since the 1700s. And I also pointed out that we are missing part of our government. And that's an important point.
But the Federation has always been there.
Yes.
So this is the part that's fascinating to people. That, okay, we've been usurped by the corporatocracy. And I stopped allowing people, Anna, in front of me to say anything about the government. I'm like, you mean the corporatocracy? Yeah. The government? No, the corporatocracy. Because we are the government.
Right. We are the government.
The corporatocracy is not alive. So they're not the government. They're the corporatocracy. And let's just call it, let's identify all the people, because this is very important. The Federation has always, Anna said, you said something on Thursday that I can't forget. You said, we've always been doing our part. It was never supposed to be my work to have to teach you your part. I was just doing my part. And right. then when you realized you needed to call the states into session, then nobody knew what that was about, because right. No one knew what was going on. And then you were like, whoa, I got to teach them. Wait a minute. And then you were like, wait a second. I can't call them into General Assembly because they don't even know how to assemble. They don't even know what's going on. And so there's this moment, Anna, where I'm just dying to ask you, wait a minute. So if you knew this part and you knew that we didn't know that part, why didn't somebody tell us this sooner? I mean, did you just not necessarily realize that they took it out of school? Because you couldn't have maybe thought that, because if right. you're out of school, why would you be paying attention to what's going on in school?
I didn't, to tell you the truth, I didn't begin to realize how much the curriculum had changed until my youngest son started school.
Okay. Well, because my mother can't comprehend why we started homeschooling, because she thought we were nutso. Okay. And I was like, Mom, you don't know what's happening in school. And remember, I just told you a couple weeks ago about the litter boxes in the schools. Like, yeah. This is a for real thing. Okay. So anybody who does not have children, for example, or anyone older who is just, y'all are done raising your kids or whatever, then you can't possibly comprehend that any adult parent is allowing their children to go to a school where they're entertaining the litter boxes.
Right. And can you imagine a public school in America not teaching American history?
I mean,
why would I even suspect that was the case? But right. Since Jimmy Carter got busy and, created the Federal Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education has been using education grants as a means of controlling the curriculum in local school districts. And the school town control of the schools has been completely overtaken by the district government. Now, whenever you see district anywhere, anytime, anything that has district in the name, you should perk up your ears and realize that they're talking about District of Columbia.
Right.
Okay.
So, British territorial government.
Or municipal government, but either way, they're talking about the foreign federal subcontractors that are headquartered in the District of Columbia. And so when they say school district, they're talking about something apart from your American school committees or councils or, whatever your school body was called. At one time, it was not called a school district back before 1860. I will guarantee you that. It was probably not called a school district until sometime in the 1880s or 90s. And it's a direct result of the fact that a third of your government is not functioning. But the
Hey,
other 2/3 of your government is functioning, and that's the good news. Okay,
yes.
so the Federation is part of the American government. And the federal government is named after the Federation because all of the delegated powers that were delegated to the federal subcontractors to do were delegated by the Federation. It's as simple as that. The Federation is American, and the federal government, as it's currently constituted, is not. The federal government operates entirely, 100%, in international and global jurisdictions. It does not have any powers whatsoever to say one word about our soil jurisdiction or our national government. And it has usurped upon the powers of the Federation and abused their delegated powers to such an extent that it's doubtful that they have any proper delegated authority either. These are international corporations that have run entirely amok for over a century. And it's up to us to get on our high horse and get off our butts and fully restore our American government and deal with the situation. In the meantime, the Federation is the delegator of all their federal powers. So what happens when they cease to exist and all of a sudden those functions that were delegated to them, pardon me, aren't getting done? Okay. Well, then,
Bless you.
What happens by the order of law is that all of the delegated powers revert to the delegator. And the easy way.
Bless you.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. Bless you.
The easy way to think about this is you hire someone to mow your lawn. They break their leg. So what are your choices? You can either hire someone new to mow your lawn, or you can mow your lawn yourself, right? And that's the same sort of situation we're in. During the Civil War, the organization that we set up and created to act as our subcontractor and that we delegated powers to stopped operating. The Federal Republic, the American Federal Republic, stopped operating in 1861. Okay, so we no longer had an American subcontractor out there doing delegated tasks under the Constitution for the United States of America with a small u on United. Okay, so the Confederation of States stopped functioning, and when the Confederation of States stopped functioning, their American subcontractor that had delegated authority as part of the federal government stopped functioning. So we're like a 6-cylinder engine that's been functioning on 4 for 160 years. All right, so in the American government, everything fell back to the Federation by operation of law, as each one of these functions that were supposed to be done by the Federal Republic returned to the delegator. However, our other two international foreign federal subcontractors, which was the Holy Roman Empire subcontractor operating under the Constitution for the United States, the municipal United States, And the British territorial subcontractor operating under the Constitution for the United States of America, or of the United States of America, rather, both of those organizations also continued on after the Civil War. And they jointly attacked the Federation and its officers and forced it underground. And it was a putsch. It was a what would you call it? A soft takeover. It was a real effort by subcontractors to usurp against the actual government. It was very self-interested on their part because they wanted to take over all of the functions of the vacated Federal Republic.
Wasn't that under King James?
They did something similar in England, but no, they did the same thing here.
Right.
And you'll see how. The Confederation, remember, was made up of members that were states of states. Okay? Those were American business organizations that were conducting routine government business for the states. See the difference? State and state of state. California, state of California.
So you're talking about the corporatocracy on the state, the corporatocracy on the state.
No, I'm talking about the Confederation of States. The original Confederation was a consortium of American unincorporated businesses.
Oh, before the current situation. I got it. Okay. Because those business owners, because originally you had to be a landowner to even vote, for one thing. And then after, and you had to be a business owner to be sitting in the
Confederate side
like,
of it.
I guess the International Business Assembly, right? Basically.
Well,
I don't know what they called it then, or if it was.
We had a completely different, very much simpler government. We had the Union States, the Federation, and the Confederation.
Right. And the Confederation operated as what we're maybe calling the International Business Assembly for the state?
No, it just conducted business, just routine business.
On behalf of the state?
Well, look at it today. What does the state of state do? Where do you encounter the state of state?
Everything.
What do they do?
Rape
and
pillage?
They keep records. They run courts. They conduct the DMV.
Right.
The state of state conducts what? It conducts business with
drug
the public.
Dealing.
No, they conduct business, routine business.
Okay.
For the state, or at least that's what they're supposed to be doing. That's what state of states do. And the American state of state businesses that existed prior to the Civil War were all unincorporated businesses that were operated and overseen by the state government, right? Well, after the Civil War, the Brits came in and they substituted their state of state organizations for our American state of state organizations. And so we had these British interlopers in there doing all the routine governmental business and interfacing with the public. And so what did they replace the state with? Because obviously our state is not in control of their state of state organization at the present time, or we have a completely different reality here. So what did they do? They said, the actual government that we forced underground and hunted and defamed and harassed and burned out and murdered and all those people, they're missing. We don't know what happened to them.
Right.
They're missing, presumed lost at sea.
Mm-hmm. And I think it was easy back then because communication was lacking.
Right. And they kept their mouths shut.
It was just easy to kill somebody off if they weren't cooperating.
And that's what they did. Well, anyway, So they pulled this business of the government here has disappeared. We don't know where they are. They must be in interregnum. They're not in session. Uh, we have no idea what happened. They're absent and in interregnum.
And then here comes Anna. Excuse me.
Right. Well, so the thing is, they substituted their state of state business organizations for our state of state business organizations. And then they said this excuse of, oh, we don't know where the government went. They're not in session. And they created state trusts. And it's the state trusts, which are also operated by them very conveniently, that direct the business of the state of state.
Because they're only can operate on paper anyway, right?
Right. They can only operate on paper. They have no substance.
Because they're not real. Like, we're alive. Here we are.
They're operating in a different jurisdiction. They're limited to operating in international and global jurisdictions. And that means they can operate on the land, they can operate on the sea, and they can operate in the air. But they're precluded from operating on the soil. And our forefathers set it up that way. And for a long time, there was nobody operating on the land. Now, the Federation, having been the delegator of all their delegated powers, has the power to operate on the land and water and air. So that's how we have general jurisdiction. And that's how we have lawful and legal and moral jurisdiction over them. That's how we have superior jurisdiction over them. Okay, so the Federation delegated all the federal powers, and when the federal subcontractors failed to operate properly, guess who those powers revert to? The Federation. So the Federation is alive and well and kicking. And we summoned the states of the Union, which are our members.
And the soil jurisdiction.
Yes, the soil and the international. Okay. Because look what happens is you arrive back home after being human trafficked into the jurisdiction of the sea. What happens? You walk back through the door. You're going from the international jurisdiction of the sea to the international jurisdiction of the land. Boom, I'm back home. What also automatically happens? Well, each one of you is living in a county, right? So you're not just in a state, you're also in a county. You have that other box attached to you. So when you come back home and you say, hey, I'm in North Carolina and I'm here, and you're standing on the land of North Carolina, you are also standing on the soil of North Carolina because you live in a county as well as a state. See how that works? So you're automatically repopulating both the land and the soil at the same time. So the Union state is being rebuilt at the same time that the State of the Union is being rebuilt. Both of those jurisdictions are being occupied at exactly the same time. And so, as I said, you can't separate the land and the soil or the soil from the land. You have to have both. You have to have the land underlying the soil, and then the soil is its own separate jurisdiction. It's like layer cake. And excuse me, girls, I just have to go find myself something. I can't go on like this. I'm too congested. I'll be right back.
Take a break. It's fine. Okay. That's a lot. I hope everybody's following this jurisdictional conversation.
We need this. And the Federation, she's told you about the Confederation, the Federation, the Union of States. She's laying it out. And as Niti says, it just all came together. That happened to me about 2 years ago. You just get so much information, and one day you go, oh, that's connected to that, and that works with that. And if that's missing, that's not going to work. But when we restore this, that'll work. And you'll begin to start putting it all together. And then it's like, oh, this is what we're doing.
Right. Because there's so much chaos and garbage and whatever. I'm going to take a couple of these quick questions while Anna's doing this. So, Jeff, she clarified that last Thursday, and you can get a you can get a credential card. And
Yes.
your coordinator might need to watch that training. Hey, okay, Anna. Good. No,
Yeah,
you never
have
never need to. Yeah. We sorry, go ahead.
One thing that I haven't answered is about the head of state.
Yes.
At the time that our country was organized, and still today, you have to have a head of state. And if you don't have a head of state, then you can't be recognized as a country. Okay, so here we are. We've fought 8 years. We've managed to best England on the field, right? And we have to organize a government. However, how are we going to have a head of state in a country that is organized around the principle of equality and every man being equal and everyone having natural and unalienable rights, and absolutely opposed to the concept of monarchy and kingship? How are we going to have a head of state? Well, the obvious answer is that we can function in a number of ways. We can function with a president acting as a head of state, an elected president acting as a head of state, which is what we ultimately do and did. But we also have to have a head of state because that's a requirement of having a country. So you can't just across the board substitute an incorporated public office like president, which is essentially the president of a corporation or a incorporated entity. Operating as a head of state is different than being a head of state, okay? It's the difference between me being the king and appointing a regent to act as king, okay? But we weren't into kings. We wanted something totally different. And so just to get started and to have that backdrop and to have things kind of settled in the international community, and to have somebody who could act as the indemnifier of our fleet in the international jurisdiction of the sea, they set up a system where they would use the sovereignty in his own right that was possessed by an American from England to be the basis of their operations in those foreign international jurisdictions. And what had happened is that after the Norman conquest of England, William the Conqueror sat down and kind of marked out parcels of land that he gave to his loyal barons who had helped him conquer England. And they were all Frenchmen, okay? Mostly from Normandy. And he just took a map and drew lines and said, you know, this goes to so-and-so and this goes to so-and-so. And here's their land in England, and they shall have perpetual sovereignty in their own right. He was creating all sorts of little kingdoms for his former, in France and still in France, barons, right? To occupy and hold and keep as part of their reward for their participation in the Norman conquest. And he was giving them sovereignty in their own right on those lands. So he created all these little miniature kingdoms all over England, dispersed them out to his own barons, and made them kings in their own right on their little parcel. Okay? So suddenly, instead of there being one king of England, i.e., at that point, William the Conqueror, there were now dozens of kings of England scattered all over the entire map of England, which had been surveyed exhaustively in the early years after William's conquest of the island. So you had all of these families, these old Norman French families, the Belchers, right, who were in control of England and still are. William the Conqueror very brilliantly set it up so that there could never actually be another British monarch. Cynthia.
Can you give us an update on Talbot?
Update on what?
Talbot. You know, the guy who's in Talbot.
Okay. Lord Shrewsbury, Ivan Talbot. The Talbots are very, very, very old French. Talbot, right? It's a French name. They're Norman French. The Talbots are a very old Norman French family that came over with William the Conqueror that had fought in every battle ever since. And they were raised to the level of the Lord High Stewards. And they're hereditary Lord High Stewards. They are the ones that take over when the king fails. If the king is captured, if the king is sick and unable to perform, if the king dies intestate and has no heir, if the king has some other temporary illness where he cannot function, that responsibility then gets passed on to the Lord High Steward. And the Lord High Steward is responsible for stepping in and filling the gaps and maintaining the order of the kingdom while things get sorted out. That is the role of the Lord High Steward. He's also the keeper of the court system, especially the king's courts. And so the Lord High Steward is a very high office, and it's a hereditary high office that belongs to the Lords of Shrewsbury. And Shrewsbury and its surrounds and little attachments is a kingdom that was created during the Roman conquest and thereafter by William the Conqueror when he divided up the kingdom and made all of these former barons into kings in their own right on their own little plot of ground. So Ivan Lord Shrewsbury is the hereditary Lord High Steward that owns that little parcel of the land the moment he steps back in England. And so then he is the one responsible for cleaning up the mess in England. We've had a lot of discussion about this because we have a lot of history in common with England, and because many people came here from England, and England had the original governmental responsibility over its own colonies in this country. There's a lot of sharing of language and culture and law with England. But also then all of this comes into play. And so when the Americans, the victorious Americans after the War of Independence ended, were looking for ways to bridge between their concept of government and the monarchies in Europe, they turned to William Belcher, who was a young colonel in the Continental Army, who had inherited sovereignty in his own right directly from the entire process of William the Conqueror, making each one of these, um, they were knights in his service, but he made them kings in their own right on their own parcel of land. So William had inherited this sovereignty in his own right, and he then stepped in as the hereditary head of state to be able to talk to the crown heads of Europe on an equal basis. And he did the same thing that William the Conqueror did. He set it up so that everyone who had fought in the war, everyone that had been part of the Continental Army or Navy, would be a king in his own right on his own parcel of ground. And he also set it up so that anyone born on our land and soil from then on would be a king or queen in their own right. They would have the same sovereignty as any king in England on their own parcel. And so this is where this whole confusion about sovereignty comes from, where, yes, we enjoy sovereignty in our own right. And no, the Brits don't like that because they want a monarchy. They don't want 320 million sovereign people who are, have the same powers and the same rights as any king. They don't want that system. And so they try to bury it. They try to pretend that the Norman conquest never happened. They try to pretend that Charles III is a British monarch when he's not. They try to pretend that we're a bunch of whack jobs when we talk about sovereignty. But this is the entire history. It comes down to us all the way from the Norman conquest. And so, when we have a head of state, a hereditary head of state, it's kind of a moot point because that original hereditary head of state, having possessed it all, right, then turned around and dispersed it all by making everybody else a sovereign in their own right, you see. So did Jim do something that nobody else could do? No. Everybody else that was born on our land and soil inherited sovereignty in their own right. Okay, so anybody in this country can act as a sovereign for this country, right?
Not without the knowledge, Anna. This is the whole problem. These people are not comprehending that the world operates in a specific order. They just want to be like, well, I was born and so that's enough. And yeah, listen, I believe everybody was born worthy beyond belief. I really do. So I'm not trying to take that away from anybody. But if we want to operate in a world together with everyone, unless we want to go live like a recluse, because yeah, of course you could just go off the grid, and everyone thinks, oh, if you're going to be sovereign, that you have to go off grid, you got to go disappear off into the world somewhere. And we're here to tell you, no, that's not what we're trying to do. We're not going to go hide in the woods now.
No, we're not going to hide under a rock. We're going to take our responsibility, and as we take our responsibility, we're going to take our right. And our right is to operate as a sovereign people. And, that means self-governing all the way. Now, does Jim, my husband, have a provenance that gives him a obvious, boom, 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 okay, this guy really does have the right to exercise it? Yes, he does. He has the provenance to do this. And nobody can really question it. But, and because of that, it's easier to make the case and bring it forward. We also have the knowledge, obviously, of how this happened and why it happened, and we can bring this forward.
And the devils have to acknowledge that because there's so many people out here, so it's not very popular belief out there, but it is still true that the devils know. They comprehend this hierarchy or whatever you want to call it.
The
And
Brits do.
yeah, they 100% get it. And they honor it and they operate in that. And it is a system they 100% recognize.
Well, and people say to me, well, how can you prove this? Well, use your own eyes. When you have a system, a feudal system, every king has his coat of arms.
Mm-hmm. They don't believe that the civil Roman law is in play here. They don't believe because this is modern times. Haven't you seen the movies, Anna? Come on. Like we're living in the modern times,
Yeah, we're living in a matrix that's even more cruel than serfdom. Do you realize that most Americans pay more of their annual income than any serf ever did to the government?
Yeah. And they act like, oh well, the government's going to come and get me. Friends, you're the government.
The government gets it all. They get our paycheck.
It's not the government. It is the corporatocracy.
This is what I'm talking about.
Paper. We get nothing. They
we-
get labor.
It's the
What we have to do is redefine our relationship with government back to what it should be. They're not our mommy and daddy. They don't get to tell us what to do and how to do it. They're not our appointed custodians. They don't get to tell us what to do and how to do it.
But we think so because they took our birth certificates, Anna, and a lot of us, we wouldn't have. I mean, well, all of us wouldn't have known about this, and this is the issue. They took us as babes in our cradle, and this is the reason why they have so much power over everybody.
I've been violated.
You've been human trafficked. You've been redefined as a human and human trafficked.
That's it.
Okay, now let's just reparent ourselves and get ourselves out of this because now we're grown up. And now that we are hearing the truth and we're knowing the truth. So this is the moment, Anna, where I'm the traitor. Okay. Well, how do you know this is the truth? Okay. How do you know?
Because of the public records, all the way back to William the Conqueror. Right. Because of the genealogies, because of the land records, because of the imposition of the British title system after the Civil War, because of the changes in the style of the names, which indicates a new or different organization took over. Because we can follow this in the progression of the kind of law, because we know that we're not subject to any statutory law. So how are we being held accountable under statutes?
Right. Okay. UCC. So this is the moment, friends, who are out there in YouTube land watching. Everything Anna's saying is defined under UCC. So you can know that if you comprehend and can read.
Right. If you want to know what a state of state is, go look at the definitions for the Uniform Commercial Code. It will tell you in a very succinct little one-sentence fashion. And it leaves no different, there's no confusion in your mind that a state of state is a business organization run by a state. Okay?
Look, if Anna, I've been still trying to prove you wrong. I still try to prove you wrong all the time. And then I ask you these questions and Anna's like, oh, Niti. And then she tells me the answer. And then I can't prove her wrong still about that. Then I have to go back and I look at the UCC stuff. This is, everybody out there should be like, just chat, like say anything that we're talking about today, go look it up. And if you're going to comment in the thing or say to me something about, Niti, I don't have the bandwidth for this, or you don't want to do the research, or you just want to go find another YouTube channel and give me a link, I'm not interested in that. Go try to actually look it up because this is all recorded, like she's saying. And you can get to the truth if you're seeking it. Okay. I think we beat this to death right now and we've gone over time, but we're trying to get like just a couple more things real quick. If we can, if we have time, Anna, to hit it real fast. We've kind of been going through the moderators have been going through the questions and trying to get all the bits and the bots. Cynthia has one quick thing, and then we have a couple quick things in the chat. Is it okay for us to do that?
Immediately.
All right. So last night you talked about Space Force. You talked about them setting off this thing that's going to cause major catastrophe up and down the New Madrid Fault. Can you elaborate a little bit more? I know I got a ton of questions last night that says, if you get a chance, ask Anna to give us more information. We heard what she said.
There's maps out there, Anna. We are aware of it. We've seen it. Please tell us what you know.
Well, some of the maps are just based on the geology. We know that the Mississippi River Valley was created by an earthquake. Okay, we know that there's an active earthquake fault system underneath the Mississippi, and that the Great Lakes are also, in part, created by the way the plates, underlying plates, are connected. All right, so we know that. And so that's a geological feature that's naturally there. We know that the ocean ridges, the mid-ocean ridges, are constantly spreading and creating new crust at the surface of the earth. So if you picture the Atlantic Ocean, there's like a spine down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean of active volcanic activity. If you picture the Pacific Ocean, there's not only a mid-ocean spreading plate, but there's also an entire ring of volcanic activity around the edge of the Pacific Ocean, where that central ridge, that central spine of volcanic activity in the Pacific is constantly pushing out against the continental shelf plates and creating subduction zones. And that's why you get earthquakes in Japan, earthquakes in China, earthquakes in Australia, and all around the quote unquote ring of fire. That's what's going on, is this pressure from the mid-ocean ridges spreading out. Okay, so the mid-ocean ridges are where the Earth actually gains circumference. Okay, and that's where it pressures out on the edges against continental land masses to create the volcanoes, the volcanic activity from the subduction zone where it's pushing under the continental plate. All right, so these are geological features that we know about. We know about the New Madrid Fault System. We know about the Yellowstone caldera. We know about the ongoing northern shifting migration of the Sierra Nevada mountains. We're aware of how what appears to be so set and certain on the surface of this planet in terms of land masses. We know how they move over time. So that's all just geology. Now, what happens when you learn about scalar technology? And the scalar technology was developed primarily out of the work of Tesla. And we learned some years ago that by triangulating the right frequencies, you could build up a resonance, where the frequencies overlap and they have much greater force and ability to create movement, so that you can actually create this kind of resonance, just like a soprano can break a glass. You can create that same kind of resonance in the Earth's crusts using ultra low and very low electronic frequency messages. If you have the right frequency and enough energy behind that frequency, you can cause an earthquake. And we've known that for years and years and years.
This is the Lex Luthor plan.
Well, that you can cause earthquakes and you can modify weather. Yes. And to all those people who are just coming in from the 19th century, this has been known for decades. Yes. And it has been tested, and it is a weapon. And there are treaties, there are United Nations treaties that are in place and have been in place for many, many years, like the NMOD Treaty, the Environmental Modification Treaty, that has been in place since the 1970s that openly discusses this kind of stuff. Okay, so it's not me making it up. You can go to, you can look up NMOD treaty, and there it'll be for you to read.
Weather warfare. I mean, this has been a thing. The hurricanes, they were, tornadoes. They've been trying to destroy. This is not new.
Right, and there's all sorts of geoengineering treaties. So just read it. Become aware of what's going on in your world and stop thumping on me as if I were a nutcase. You're the ones that are not being told this by your quote unquote government, and you're the ones who are responsible as Americans and self-governing individuals who are responsible for also governing your country, who need to know about this stuff and be able to respond to it. Okay, so
the responsibility for your own knowledge, friends, it begins and ends with you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the Space Force goes, it's important to understand that although one of the Space Forces has come out of the closet, it is by no means the only. I mean, there's a Russian equivalent, a Chinese equivalent, and there are municipal equivalents. So we have a territorial Space Force that's now out in the open as part of the territorial military under Trump, okay? But there's also a Space Force under DOD, the Municipal Defense Department. And so you've got multiple Space Forces, and the DOD version, it tends to be evil. And so, you're looking at the possibility of these madmen who believe in all this superstitious, semi-scientific crap, who are they're upset because they're losing control. They've had control for centuries, and they've made lots of money off of war and slavery and all sorts of other crime, and they're finally being brought to bay for it. And they're saying, oh, well, we created this mess, and if we can't profit from it, we're going to destroy it. But what did they create? Did they create anything really worthwhile or useful or good? When we really look at it, we see that the creator is the owner of this planet, not them. And so they're just pirates. They're just users and abusers who showed up here and came up with this fraud scheme of a caste system where they were going to enslave people and use other people as overseers for them. And that's what they've done. And they haven't contributed anything worthwhile or good. They've just set up an enslavement and peonage system to benefit themselves at the expense of everyone else. And so these criminals, because this is crime, have determined that if they can't keep their ill-gotten gains and their unjust enrichment, they're going to destroy everything. And they've centered this around a religious cult called the Black Sun. And the Black Sun is what you see when the moon overtakes the solar powers during an eclipse, a total eclipse. And this then plays into another thing that they created, which was the entire religion of Islam, which, if you delve into it, you find out that the Roman Catholic Church was responsible for funding Muhammad the Prophet, and that all of this stuff was created the same way that they went into Palestine and created Palestine. Okay, they took names out of the Bible, and let me give you a kind of a simplified bird's eye view of the whole situation there with Israel and the Middle East. After the First World War, the Ottoman Empire fell apart, and that affected the entire Eastern Mediterranean. The British went in there under the International Balfour Declaration, right, as a protectorate, to establish a protectorate and to provide a safety net and occupational force in the area, okay? So the British territorial government goes in there, the Raj, and they just arbitrarily create Palestine out of thin air. They, drew lines on the map and said, okay, this is Palestine. And everybody who lives in the borders of this arbitrarily created entity, Palestine, is now a Palestinian. Whether you're a Jew, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Buddhist, it doesn't matter what religion you are a Palestinian because you live within the borders of this artificially created state that we just, took a name out of the Bible to make it look more official, and poof, there you are. You're all Palestinians. Prior to that, everybody had been living in the region with an unincorporated government, and they had been getting along just fine. And then Britain comes in, and why is this no surprise? Because Britain is at the bottom of every dog pile on earth, right? Britain comes in and causes trouble. And they cause trouble by promoting this lie, by creating this thing called Palestine and drawing out little demarcations and lines on the map according to their say-so, and, deceiving everyone by picking a name from the Bible so that people would think, oh, well, this is ancient Palestine. No, it's not. It's an arbitrary state created by the Brits. Okay, so they create Palestine. And then what else do they do? Well, then they create Israel inside of Palestine. And they do this as a quid pro quo, a thank you to the Rothschild banking empire for backing them through the First World War. So it's a quid pro quo. And Jacob Rothschild essentially rented the segment of Israel for 99 years and paid for the lease. And the Brits did this for him as a thank you. And they basically created Israel at his behest, and he used his funds to promote it. And there you have it. Israel has been created by Britain in the middle of what they also created called Palestine. And so they've now created two separate populations, one identifying as Palestinians and one identifying as Israelis, along religious lines of separation and division. All right, so they've created a wasp's nest. They've created division, and they have set up a situation for eternal war between Israel and Palestine. And it's all arbitrary. It's all just names. It's all bullshit. And the Brits did it on purpose. Again, it's not the first time they've done this. Okay? So we've got this whole imbroglio in the Middle East because of them, because of their meddling in somebody else's business, in somebody else's land, in somebody else's lives, in other people's religions. And you see this same pattern over and over again. Now, the evidence is that the entire Muslim religion was created by the Roman Catholics in the same exact way. That they actually went in and promoted the ideas of the Prophet Muhammad with the intent of doing the same divide and conquer. All right? Now ask yourselves, how is it that all these countries in the Mideast have flags that prominently feature the colors black, red, white, and green? Exactly the colors that appear related to the four horsemen of the apocalypse. This did not happen by accident. This was pre-planned as a do-it-yourself stage production of the end of the world. And it was planned and done by who? The Catholic Church and the Brits. Now, the Catholic Church may have been operating in its territorial capacity as the Holy See, right? Just like the Brits may have been acting in their territorial capacity as the British Raj. But no matter what hat they wear, it still comes down to the fact that these are the people who did it.
And they are manipulating the words in the Bible, just like drying up the river Euphrates and all of the other things you just put in that hot article that came out this morning. I mean, you give it to us on Monday night, we get the hot in the night, and then we get you again today. I mean, I'm telling you, sometimes it's hard to keep up. But all of the churches across America are talking about this. But they're talking about the four horsemen, as in death and money and other things, and the blood up to the bridle of the horse, because the Bible was written wrongfully. And people are very confused. They cannot see through the information that's being given and use the noodle as to what is true and isn't true. And just like the river Euphrates, they dammed it up. And now they've made another Bible prophecy come true just by manipulating what they were doing.
Right. It's a do-it-yourself fulfillment of Bible prophecy is what it is. And it's about as valid as a $3 bill. But if you watch what they're doing, what they have done over time is that they come in and they pull all of this legalistic bullshit and get everybody to follow along with it, thinking that they have to and that it's their government when it's not their government. They pull this sleight of hand thing, right? Just like a sideshow magician, and they get everybody confused. And then they come in and they rape and pillage and embezzle and eat out the substance, as Thomas Jefferson described it, of the country that's the victim. And then the parasite moves on to another country, like they're trying to move on. They moved on from Britain to America, and from America they're moving on to China. They're a parasite. They have a host, and they eat it out. And then when they're done, they kill as many of their victims as they can. They kill their creditors. And then they disappear behind a big smoke screen of violence and war and confusion and chaos that they profit from because they are the merchants of war. They're always loaning money to both sides of every conflict. Look at what happened in Israel just now with the quote-unquote invasion of Hamas. British MI6 gives money and armaments to Hamas, right? Oh boy, we got all this money and we got all these armaments. Woo-hoo, we're going to, do something with this, right? So then they talk to Netanyahu and they say, hey, Benny, buddy, we got Hamas all worked up and armed and ready and money and everything. They're ready to go. Why don't you just dissolve your border patrol and your border surveillance in this sector for a few days? And we'll pay you, and we'll pay your cronies, and we'll give you all sorts more armament, okay? And when Hamas goes into this trap and creates this whole situation, blows up all these people, well, then you will have the excuse, appearing to have the upper hand and the moral high ground, to go in there and completely obliterate Gaza. So that's what they've done. And they not only did that because of the the quid pro quo right up front, they did it because oil has been discovered under the Gaza Strip. And so it's a win-win, in part, to the narrow extent that the Israeli government is thinking of it, because they get all the money and arms as an extra sop. They're not paying for what they're doing in Gaza. That's being all paid for, right? And then they get the oil, and they clear out all the old wretched, impoverished development in Gaza and make way for brand new, modern city-state things for Israelis. So they're looking at it in terms of gaining land for expansion and development, gaining oil so that they have the wealth from the oil, and getting the funding and the quote unquote defense aid, all of this. And so, they've set this up, folks, and every player has had their own self-interest in it, but there's something beyond this. There's a bigger picture here. They have managed to so outrage all of the Muslims in the entire region. All the other countries in the entire region are outraged by the violence and the complete lack of humanitarian aid and everything else that has been filthy. The genocide that Israel has carried out in Gaza has outraged the entire region. It has galvanized cooperation between Muslim governments in the region that hasn't existed and unified like this in 150 years. So they have purposefully set up this entire thing so that the Muslim governments are looking at a combined effort to come in here and completely annihilate Israel as it stands, just annihilate it. And they can do it. And even if they couldn't do it, Russia and China, the kings of the north, are standing right there ready to sweep in and make sure that it works. And there isn't a damn thing that we can do about it. So Britain has created this entire mess. They created it with the Balfour Declaration and their mishandling and abuse and guile and all of their crap, creating Palestine as an entity in the first place, then creating Israel out of Palestine, which they had no possible right to do. And then now they've come in and they've specifically created this mess with MI6 funding Hamas. Now you tell me that Britain is not a rogue state. Britain is a rogue state. It's been a rogue state for 300 years. And these animals have created all this, and then they've profited. They've profited because at the end of all of this, they are already set up as the good friends and buddies of the victors, no matter which side wins. And they've made a ton of money off of selling arms and supplies to both sides. You see, they're making out like bandits by promoting war for profit. And we're letting them. We're just all standing here like dumbasses, letting them get away with this. And then they come out with a sanctimonious, poof, poof, oh, well, we're the wonderful Brits,
They're using our people.
And they're using our people. They're using people from Germany. They're using people from France, from Belgium, from South Africa, from Australia.
So when are we getting our military under control? This is a whole different situation. And this is why everybody's like, okay, so our military is doing that. And we have a federation and we have a head of state. And then how do we get hold of our military with our own federation? This is why everybody on America is confused.
Well, you see, the thing is that they're under international contract and everybody knows it.
And everybody but the people. This is what I'm saying. The people don't know this. This is the confusion, Anna.
Because they never read the damn Constitution, any of the constitutions. It's because when they were kids in school, they just kind of glossed over that.
Well, they didn't read them. We don't know that there's 3 of them. We don't know that we stand over them. The problems are vast.
Right.
And the education problem is vast. And then on top of that, you have the brainwashing and the mind control. And then we have the arrested development. Let us not forget that part. We have the arrested development. We're dealing with a world full of man babies who they aren't aware that they haven't actually been raised into adulthood properly.
woman babies too, unfortunately.
Well, Anna, man means woman too.
Yes, well, I just want to point out that some of the women that I've met really are,
Some,
it's like
a
dealing
lot.
with a perennial teenager. But anyway,
Yeah, all of them. I mean, listen, you had to write an article to tell everybody just how to behave. This is what I'm talking about. It's not that people just haven't been in a meeting. They think that they've been in, like school events and things like that. They can't comprehend the decorum of kings because they've only ever been slaves.
well, I guess that may be it. But we do have a lot on our shoulders to learn. We have a lot on our shoulders to perceive, to learn and discern. Because right now, these do it yourself end of the worlders are seeking to remove their operations to China. The parasite is moving on. And if the Chinese government and the Chinese people allow this, they will come over there and they will eat their substance out, just as they've done to Britain and Europe and to us. Um, and they will continue to create havoc on the earth. And so now they've got this biblical narrative going, and they've got all these people that aren't seeing the hand behind the platform. They're not seeing the puppet master standing behind the theater. And the puppet master is moving its business to China, which will remain relatively unscathed by all of this. And they will sit behind a 1,000,000-man Chinese army that they will arm to the teeth, and they will use the Chinese as the world's policemen. And they'll set up the same caste system, and they will be back in business within 10 years. And in the meantime, they will cause all sorts of misery and chaos and destruction throughout the rest of the world. And they will profit from it because that's how they make their profit, is war for profit. And they will sell armaments and supplies to all sides. And they will, do the glad handing and the shaking of the hands, and they'll be oh so charming. And everybody will think that they're wonderful people, when actually they're the cause of the entire misery of the world. And it's because they are dependent upon making war to make money. And because they are in the thrall of the Roman Catholic Church, which has adopted since the days of Loyola the crazy idea that it's okay to kill for Jesus.
Right. Right. This is and the immorality. Anna, we were just having a conversation earlier, and the way that the brainwashing and the mind control and the programming has gone, people just cannot even recognize immorality for what it is. It's on its face most of the time. Like, no one is because if you think about what you're saying just with the titles, right? And what the doctors are doing, for example, what the attorneys are doing. These are professionals that are respected within our society, and folks aren't comprehending that they have been manipulated and, because from birth, right, like raised into this situation to operate immorally. But the laws of the universe are plain. And immorality is aligned with lies, and it has negative repercussions, which will bring us, holds us in slavery. And unless and until we reverse that, we cannot break the bondage of the slavery. We have to walk in morality, and we have to recognize it for what it is. No one these days gets that part because they are doing the job that they've been trained to do, like go to school, go to university, get the job. This is the only thing they know, Anna. They think they're doing a good job. They're going to church, they're going to whatever, and they're following the protocol, right?
Well, that's just the pity of it.
That's right.
People think that they're doing the right thing. Most of these people think that they are following the law.
Right.
people think that what they're being told is correct. And this is where the real prophecy comes pedal to the metal. Depart from me, all you evildoers. I know you not.
See?
You have undertaken all of this stuff thinking that you were doing right, but you didn't discern. You didn't put in the time and effort to truly know and check your six against, is what I'm doing equaling what I'm saying? Am I telling the truth?
What is the truth? They will argue about this truth, Anna. They will argue this truth to my truth, your truth. No, there is an objective truth.
Right. And it's up to them to seek it and find it. It's not up to me to do it for them. I'm already doing more than my share by pointing out where it is. There was nobody to point it out to me except my mom and my grandma.
Cynthia and I were having the same question. Cynthia said, we have folks, we talk to across all the assemblies, Anna. We have people all across the country that are talking to us because of the podcast, right? And so Cynthia says, well, nobody was pointing that out to me. I don't know why I feel like I need to take responsibility to point it out to this person that much more when we are already saying it every single week right here. Friends, we love you so much. We don't care what you think. You have to make the time to do the study, and ask yourself the hard question. You got to be honest with yourself. We don't need to know the answer from you. We're not putting you on the spot.
Do you know who 90% of the people I work with in the Federation are?
No. I think we know a few of them. We don't know all of them, no.
90% of them are former veterans who tried to prove me wrong.
Okay. That was me too. And for the record, I don't just follow Anna blindly, and I couldn't have done that. My husband wasn't going to come along. We had to try to prove her wrong to see what's right. But I'll tell you what, Anna, I already had a lot of experiences, and you just kind of clarified for me what the truth of it was. And guess what? Every time I have tried to stand on it, it's more and more solid. It's more and more solid. Do you know I got pulled over by somebody? I got pulled over this morning. I was talking to Cynthia about the podcast in preparation for today. We were discussing the show, and I got pulled over. This truck kept coming up on me and backing up, and coming up on me and backing up. And I wasn't telling her anything about it, but I was feeling like, who is this aggressive, crazy person? I mean, at the beginning, I thought maybe I'm talking to Cynthia too much and I'm not going fast enough or something like that. I started to speed up, and then I went, wait a minute, I'm not going to let this guy push me. So then I started slowing down. And then, the brake test, like, back up, Mr. Guy. I'm doing this. He turns the lights on. I was like, oh, this is fascinating. And so I did the old lady move where, you drive up the street a little bit slower and slower and slower, and you pull into the parking lot. And I pull all the way. I wasn't going to stop on the highway. I pulled into the parking lot, and I said, well, good morning. I said, what's the emergency? And he goes, well, I was going to ask you that. He was all like, ready. He was ready to get me. Okay. And he says, I was going to ask you that. You're just flying down the street. I had to catch up to you. And I said, no, actually, I saw you come up to me, almost tag me, back up. I said, I was wondering what was going on. I said, I was talking to my friend, so I could have been distracted. I might have been wrong. I said, but I thought, wait a minute, maybe I'm going too slow. I started going a little bit faster. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not going to let this person press me and push me into a situation I don't want to be in. So I started slowing back down. I said, then you were just riding my tail. And I was wondering who you were when you turned the lights on. And I said, but anyway. So he says, well, I'd like to see la, 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 and I gave him everything, because my goal is always to go home. I can always go home and write my letters out to whoever I need to write them to and fix everything, right? Do you know what happened? He took my information. He went back there, and in a few minutes, he came back to me. And this is a very aggressive somebody, okay? He came up to me and he says, well, it looks like your registration is, out of date. You're going to need to renew that. And it also looks like you like to speed. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you have several tickets, which I don't know what he's talking about. Then he said something about I got a ticket in Virginia. I did probably a few years ago, like, one time. And I said, oh, okay. I said, he goes, he goes, I'm not going to give you a ticket for either of those today. I'm just going to ask you to slow down and take it easy. I was like, really? Thank you so much. I said, thank you. And it was really
cause to stop you.
well, what I just sent notice to the DMV and to the governor and our Secretary of State last week, declaring who I am with your silver bullet thing that you sent us. And apparently it must be flagged on my account because I cannot believe the way, look, we're mamas, right? When somebody comes at you, and he went back there and it looked like somebody told him, stand down. I don't even know what's going on here. But he went back to his car and somebody said, stand down. And he came back, and I have never seen somebody change their vibration so dramatically.
Well, they know who we are.
Well, he knew who I was. He knows who I was.
Look, we have just in the last couple of weeks created some real game changers here.
Right.
One of the game changers is to make the international announcement that, hey, there are no war powers. There's no war. They cannot take refuge in the law of war because all these things have been mercenary conflicts. There isn't a war in the entire lot. So they have no basis for the War Powers Act.
Mm-hmm.
They have no basis for any emergency declarations or executive orders. They have no basis for the Trading with the Enemy Act.
Mm-hmm.
Poof, all that stuff is flushed. Okay? And they were using that as their protection and their excuse for occupying our country illegally.
Mm-hmm.
And for all of these vicious attacks, they were saying that we were the enemy, right? And they were setting this whole thing up to make it look like we were, no matter where we were standing or what we were doing. Either we were the enemy of the territorial government, or flip the stage and we're the enemy of the municipal government. No matter what, we're caught in the crossfire. Okay? But you take away that presumption of war, and all of a sudden, whoop, the whole thing just collapses, and they're back to, oh, well, gee, we're occupying this country under very questionable circumstances, and we really have no contract to be here doing this, and we probably won't get paid for doing this. And oh my God, these are civilians. These are our employers. We shouldn't be occupying this country and defending them. All of a sudden, all these issues that were so pat and so cut and dried and giving them so much power over us are now gone. As if we took a pen and just went, Title 50 no longer exists. Yo, Cynthia.
All right, we got to get a question or two in here. How does a newly papered up American collapse the SPC trust with a $100 million bond registered in Puerto Rico? I was speaking English.
Well, SPC bond means a secured party creditor bond.
Right.
If everybody claims $100 billion, there's not going to be enough to go around, okay? That's not the point. The point is that these corporations are responsible for holding us harmless from all of the things that have resulted from them creating these fictional entities. So it's not about being an asshole yourself. It's about getting back what's yours and not having to put up with this harassment and all these false charges and impositions and impersonations. That's what it's about. If you want to be a billionaire, get out and earn it. Don't ask me for some way to cheat the system. I have the ability to take the entire world and save it for myself. And what would have happened?
Right.
Okay.
They need to care. They don't comprehend the law of nature. You said that there's two laws that we have to follow, and it's the law of nature and it's the common law.
Right. And
So,
basically, it all boils down to treating others as you would be treated yourself.
right.
And it is not reasonable. It is not sane. It's not fair. It's not decent in any way, shape, or form.
Decent. It's
For
the
people,
decency.
for people to come out here and, try to charge these corporations $100 billion because they're offended. I'm sorry.
We're bigger than that because we're the kings and the queens, right, Anna?
Right. Well, all that's going to happen, all that's going to come of that is that you're going to be identified as a selfish troublemaker.
Right.
You're going to be identified as somebody that really doesn't give a rat's ass about anybody else.
Mm-mm.
You're going to be identified as somebody that is making unrealistic claims based on you being offended. Well, so everybody's been offended by this system. Don't go that route. Go the route of sharing and caring, because that's the only thing that really brings us all together and puts an end to this nonsense. I could have made the claim of the entire world because I was in that position to do that. And what did I do? I made the claim for everyone with hands and feet and blood in their veins and flesh in their bodies. I didn't make it just for me. I made it for all of us. And there's a reason that I don't encourage people to go into these special, these secured party creditor clubs and to file all this UCC 1 crap. It's because I've already done it, number one. So, my claim predates anything you're going to put out there. And number two, because you can get in trouble doing it. You can literally get yourself in trouble doing a lot of stuff in the UCC. So what you need to do is step back, really learn. If you're even going to pursue the UCC at all, step back and really learn how that works, and limit yourself to the things that make sense.
Cal Washington's teaching it. He's teaching law merchant if somebody really wants to learn it. But you guys really need to hold your horses. They need to hold their horses, Anna.
Well, right. And yeah, sure. We can use law merchant to seek individual redress from wrongs that have been done to us. But the underlying issue is inheritance.
Our courts can give us more power than that, friends. And that's what we keep trying to tell you. There's so many questions in here that I'm not going to put on the screen at all, because if you get your 4 pillars up, you don't have to deal with that. So I'm just skipping it. But we're just going to do this real quick. Ding, ding, ding. This is about the beneficiary situation on the GFG account, Anna. I don't think we can make the beneficiary a charity or a ministry, because those are not living people, right?
Well, no, he's talking about a GFG vendor account. That's a whole different thing.
So you can?
Yeah, a vendor account is a business account. So
can the vendor account beneficiary be a charity?
Why not? If it's unincorporated.
Okay. And then can the beneficiary be under 21? That's probably for anybody, right? Like any personal, like for our children, like we can leave our children as the beneficiaries of our accounts.
You can leave your children as the beneficiary of your accounts, but he's asking, can a beneficiary be an ASN baby under 21, a minor? And the way that works is that they have their own account, but they're not eligible to access it until they can be accruing, deposits, but they don't have any direct access to that until they're 21.
Right. But can we put them down as a beneficiary?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Your kids can be signed up as ASNs. They just don't get to vote until they're 21. Right. And they don't get control of their own property interests until they're 21.
Right.
And so.
And then can GFG vendor account beneficiary be anything other than living man, woman?
A vendor account is different, folks. A vendor as a business. A vendor is somebody that's providing a service or a product to other people. That's a vendor. Okay.
I wonder if they mean, and I don't know, because we're just making a lot of assumptions here because Nicole hadn't put a whole lot of details in here. But also, Anna, there's a bunch of people who have like split homes where somebody's an American and then somebody's not. If they're not, then they can't be the beneficiary, right? They have to be ASN, right?
Right.
Yeah.
For example, you have the right to own land.
Right.
They don't. And you can't give it to them.
Right.
You can't give them your right, just like Congress can't avoid its legislative duty.
I have a question left over from last week. It says when we do a baby deed on the LRO, it goes on to a private tab in a slot under the status tab for the baby deed. It's not in the system and you can't see it. So when these people have the baby deeds and someone goes to look them up, they're on a private tab. Will they still show up on E-Verify or anything if they're pulled? I yield.
I don't know what the answer to that is. Generally speaking, we protect the identity of children under the age of 21. And we protect their records just routinely because that's the decent thing to do. And because we don't want people to have undue access and knowledge of our children. It's a private thing. But that doesn't mean that they can't have a sub-account under their parent in the Global Family Bank and be accruing as Americans during their minority. It just means that in our world, in our government, people have to be 21 before they reach the age of majority. And hopefully the parents are teaching their children and preparing them for life and showing them the structure of the world and where they fit in it, and that they'll be prepared by 21 to be able to manage their own affairs and make their own investments and decisions.
So on that note, you're saying that my children, I can go ahead and set up GFG accounts for them and we manage them on their behalf. They'll just be accruing, but they won't have access to them till they're 21. Correct?
Right.
So I do that based on their baby deed number?
Yeah, you would use that as their, you would link theirs to yours.
Okay. I don't have instructions on that.
Well, I'm not sure that I do either, because I'm not that familiar with how the international system there is set up for that.
I'll ask my friend who can tell us. But
I'm a great grandma at this point, and my youngest child is damn near 30. So it's I'm not the best person to ask on how they're structuring the baby deeds in the LRO or in the international system.
They weren't doing that. So maybe we'll find out and we can do that. So just like the conversation that we had on Thursday with you about how that wasn't made available to our teenagers who needed, some type of credential. So just like they didn't have credentials, that isn't being addressed in the bank, just so you know. And if there was a way for us to do that, that would be fantastic.
Okay. Well, I will certainly talk to the LRO and bank people that work on all this. But again, I'm trying to tell you that we try to shield the children from public exposure. And so maybe the answer will be that, we issue a card that has their photograph, birthday, address, that kind of thing. But we link it to their parents' account, like, your account number and your account number and B, and then have a shielded private sub account that is for each one of the children.
Just like they're doing on the LRO, they're putting them under our thing, not their own. So maybe the GFG people will do the same thing for the banks.
Yeah, I would think so because, they're Americans.
That's right.
They're inheritors.
Guess what? When my daughter got her driver's license, she, like you said that we're teaching them. So we're teaching them. So she signed it V.C with her byline and her copyright symbol. And it was so funny. The lady at the DMV was like, I just need your first and last name. And she said, oh, okay. And then she just wrote it a little bit smaller and made it fit a little bit tighter. And the lady said it one more time. And so she wrote just a little bit smaller. And then finally the lady gave up. And so her the way that she signed her ID was with her V.C. So, because I had taught her, I said, that means that you're signing something under duress because we don't actually need their permission for this. And so she said, that means that I should sign this under duress. But I just need it so that if they're going to pull me over, I can show them something they recognize. I said, yep. So she did it. And I thought that was pretty smart.
Well, your signature can be anything that you squiggle.
Sure.
Right. So that's causing a lot of trouble for the banks because people are using quote unquote executive signatures. And then they do it one time that way, and they do it that way, a different way the next time, and so there's really no identification possible. Yeah. And so the banks are pushing for the RFID system, the implanted chip system, and we're pushing back and saying, hell no, we're not dumb cattle. And God gave us our own little identifier here. It's right here on our thumbs, and if you really want to be sure it's us, there's no better identifier than our actual thumbprint.
Well, you did it, Anna. We've gone way over. This is a fantastic episode. I hope all of you guys enjoyed this fantastic education, and we love you so much. We will see you next week on Tuesday, same time.
Same bad station.